Welcome back, everybody. I'm Marcus Aurelius, and you're watching Dominions 4, The Thrones of Ascension, also known today as The Real Housewives of the Streamlands, where, if you missed our last episode, Ursula, the Anunnaki of Love and War, scorned ex-wife of God, is going to lead her army of wild, well, slightly less wild now, Enkidu out of and into the world to dominate. She is not alone, however. Many foes and challenges stand in her way, including 6 other wannabe gods who think that they have the right stuff. What you're seeing right here is the flavor text that pops up before every game, basically just saying that in the beginning there was chaos, things were crazy, it was like a shopping mall at Christmas, but then the Pantocrator came, and he, like a boss, put everything to right, solved all the problems, and there was much rejoicing. But now, the wheel is turned once again. Chaos is rising yet again, the Pantocrator is nowhere to be found, and a bunch of wannabe gods are popping up everywhere. Of which we are among them. So let's take a look at what we've got tactically. First things first is I like to push the insert button, which gives you a map view that, if you'll notice, goes from one end of the screen to the other. So it fits everything horizontally in one screen. You still have to scroll up vertically, but at least you have that much in front of you. Now it looks like tactically we're in a pretty good position. We're on this little island. If you'll zoom out you can see a little better. We're on this little island that's connected to the mainland by only 2 bridges. Now if you right click on a province, you'll be able to see all of the provinces that are next to it. You'll notice that some connections are blue with a little hole in the middle. What this means is these connections are passable during the winter when the rivers snow over, ice over. That'll never happen for us though, because our Dominion has heat in it, which is a good thing, I think. It provides choke points and helps us defend. The AI likes to generate huge armies and throw them at you, so, the fewer provinces you have available for plunder, the better. Unfortunately, it looks like, as far as our capital province, we're not in too great of a place. Our production is pretty low, and we're right next to a wasteland with low income, although it does have decent production. We only have 2 neighbors, and your fortress takes a little bit of the production from each of your neighbors. So in this case, if we would have had, let's say, 3 or 4 or 5 neighbors, we would have been in a much better position, but I think we'll do okay. There's a forest nearby. This right here looks like a pretty decent place for a second castle. You'll notice on the map little thrones of Ascension. This one is one of the closer ones. Then you've also got this one up here, this one over here, this one right here, and this one here. This is also kind of interesting because it's a swamp province, and as I mentioned in the intro video, if you conquer a swamp province you have access to some different units who are pretty cool. So let's take a moment and look at Let's look at what we're about. As you can see, it has 1 candle of my Dominion. As you expand, build temples, and move your priests around, your Dominion increases. It represents, again, the stats that I picked when I designed my god. Is an interesting nation, and let's go over their commanders and units. First thing we have is an Enkidu scout. Every nation has a scout, and it's basically a stealthy unit that can run around and spy on enemy provinces, find out kind of what's in there, what troops, how many of them. In this case, I think it's kind of weird. I mean, imagine, if you will, a human city bustling with activity, and all of a sudden you see Andre the Giant with horns coming out of his head walk in. It's not exactly what I would call inconspicuous, but I guess it works. The next is a regular Enkidu commander. He's pretty much unremarkable, but he can lead 60 units, so he'll be the main guy we use to ferry troops around. One thing I want to state is that, as far as these stats go, 10 is generally average, human average. So you'll notice that in most cases we are slightly better than average, except for in protection. Protection's a representative of how much armor you're wearing, and as you can see, we're not really wearing much. We're not wearing a helmet, and we're not wearing any pants. So that's something we're going to have to work on, and if we can get some magical spells that increase protection, that would really help us out, and I've planned to do just that. Just to give you a brief overview of what the stats mean, gold is how much gold it costs to recruit the unit. Hit points are hit points, everybody knows what those are. Also size. Enkidu are slightly bigger than humans. Humans are size 2, Enkidu are size 3. This matters in battle because 3 humans basically take up the same space as 2 Enkidu, and they can get 3 attacks off against 2 of ours. Protection is, as I mentioned, armor. Magic resistance is your resistance to spells. Morale is how much you can take before they break and run. Most battles in this game do not go till everybody's dead. They go till one army decides to flee like cowards. And so one of the keys here is making sure your armies have high morale, or that you have troops or spells that lower the morale of your enemy. Another thing that's interesting to look at here is the upkeep cost. This is how much this unit will cost every year in gold to maintain. Next you have resources. That's how much resources the unit costs. Strength is how strong the unit is. You'll notice these guys are 15 and human value is 10. That just means they hit hard and they're tough guys. Attack skill is exactly what it says, as is defense skill. Defense skill, though, just to compare it to production, is your ability not to get hit. Once you are hit, then your protection comes into play. And one thing to note is that your shield defense will, well, your parry score will be added to your defense skill. So if the enemy rolls, let's say, between a 13 and 17, it'll hit your shield and glance off, and that'll increase your protection for that hit. Precision is mostly for archers or spellcasters. It's just how well you are at hitting things from far away. Encumbrance is how much fatigue you take every turn when you're attacking. This is not so important for troops, but it's pretty important for mages, because when you get to encumbrance 100, you fall unconscious, and anybody could kill you, you can't move, and spells are pretty fatiguing. So that's why that's important. I think encumbrance, no. Fatigue also tells you what your age is. If you get beyond a certain point, you get old, and what that means is you have a chance to get diseases and eventually die. This is your move score. This is how much you can move on the world map and how much you can move on the battle map. And finally, leadership is how many units you can command. These slots are for you to put magical items if you have any to help your commanders out. You'll notice our basic guy has a spear. Doesn't much look like a spear, but that's what it is. And a spear has pierce damage, which, if I recall correctly, means it has some anti-armor properties. The next leader I want to look at is the Enkidu Elder. Please let me know in the comments if I'm wrong on this, but I don't see any reason at all to hire this guy. He can lead more troops around than a commander, but he is subpar in every other way, and he's old, so he has stat penalties and a chance to get diseases. He also has inspiration -1, which means every troop under his command has 1 less morale. Probably not a good idea. Now we're going toward our mages, and also from here forward are our sacred units. Sacred units are interesting because not only can you bless them, and they'll get benefits from that, but they also cost half as much to maintain as a regular unit. The first sacred unit of is the Gala. I get what this unit's about, and it's utilizing a new ability that's not in Dominions 3, it's new to Dominions 4, called Elegist, which means they're particularly good at calling your god back from the dead. So in this game, your god takes physical form and walks around, and occasionally they can die. Now, you can call the god back, but they suffer a penalty. They lose 1 in every path of magic. So if, let's say, they start with 4 earth and 4 nature, they'll come back with 3 earth and 3 nature. Well, this nation is special in that when they call their dead gods back, they don't lose anything, which is kind of neat if you're having a super combatant god, but since Ursula doesn't really figure to get in any battles, it's not really a big deal. I don't see myself hiring any of these units. This, however, I will be hiring. This is the Salme, and she's a pretty subpar mage, but she's got 9 research for 100 gold, and her maintenance is 40, which halved because she's sacred is 20, so she's a pretty cheap researcher, and I'm going to be building her in all of my castles that I can. The next is our main battle mage. This is the Gudu. He can also be built anywhere. He has interesting magic here. You see he has 1 holy, but also 2 question mark. Well, what is question mark? Question mark means random. Usually this adds an extra path onto what they already have, but in this guy's case, it just means that he has a 50-50 chance. He'll either get 2 air or 2 earth. These guys are out the gate going to be my main battle mages, but also once Ursula's out and I'm able to build some boosters for them, are going to become quite powerful. Not at the beginning, but later on. This gentleman is the best unit that you can recruit outside of your capital. He has 2 water and 1 question mark, which has a 100% chance of either getting air, earth, or nature. To be honest, I don't know much about these guys. If I'm going for a water mage, I'll go up the chain, but I have been thinking about it, and I think one thing these guys can do is there's a special spell called Quickness, which causes your troops to increase their defense and attack faster. A few of these guys casting that spell over and over might do us a good turn. So now we have our capital only mages. These can only be recruited here in this place, and they are slow to recruit, which means it takes 2 turns to recruit them. There's the N2, which I really like. She's got Inspiration +2, which means all troops under her command gain 2 morale. But here's the problem. She can only command 10 troops, or 15 if they're magical troops. So she's kind of hampered by that. She has good stats, 2 Earth, 1 Nature, 3 Holy. As I mentioned earlier, 3 Holy is a big deal. And then 100% chance of Air, Water, Earth, or Nature. So given some lucky picks, she can get 3 Earth or 2 Nature. Certainly pretty decent, but there's another troop you can hire outside of the castles called a Shaman, who's better in all respects. I did try to kit one of these out as a Thug. Now, a Thug is basically a super champion, super combatant light, who is a tough unit that's supposed to go in and take over provinces by themselves. And she didn't last a minute. She just doesn't have the hit points. It's just not worth it. So I want to like this unit, but I don't really know how to use it. Next, we have the big guy, the NC. He is, again, only recruitable in the capital. He takes 2 turns to recruit. 2 Water, 1 Nature, 3 Holy again, and then a chance of Air, Water, Earth, or Nature. Now, he's just like the Ishib, but better. And he can lead 80 guys. Unlike the NT, though, he only has an Inspiration +1. He's also cold resistant. That could be useful in some situations, scenarios. Now with our troops. We have your typical Enkidu soldier. As you'll notice, low protection. Everything else is average or slightly above. So a spell that helps protection would really be good for these guys, and I intend to research one of those straight away. These guys are important. They're the Hornblowers. They add to the morale of the unit they're put with. So I'm going to try to put one of these with every unit, obviously to keep them from running away. This is going to be our main troop when I can afford it. They're armored with the best these guys can handle, the bronze scale. So their protection's up to 9, and they're pretty decent, and they have spears, which I mentioned earlier can pierce through armor, but also keep your enemies at a distance because they're length 4. So they're good for a defensive front line. Then we have the Urguard. These guys are pretty cool because they have a special bonus where when they're inside of a castle, they count as 2 people for defensive purposes. So they're best to have under siege to protect your castles from being conquered. If I can afford it, I'm certainly going to build these guys in every castle that I have. Then these 2 units can only be recruited in the capital, and they're both sacred. There's the Enki's Chosen, which can be blessed, of course, but also is neat in the fact that he has a special skill called Bodyguard, which means that when you assign them to guard a commander, they have a higher chance of being there if the commander's ever under assassination attempts, and the number of their bodyguard score increases their morale during those events. And then finally there's the Sarush, the 300-pound gorilla dragon without wings creature that is incredibly expensive, has a ton of hit points, but isn't that impressive. I tried them in the previous game, and even Blessed, they weren't doing a whole lot. I guess if you had a pretty decent Blessed, they'd be a beast, but I don't. They do have Fear, which is good. You might want to keep a couple in the front line, but they are slow to recruit, and you can only recruit them in the capital, so you're never really going to mass a lot of these guys. So that's what we have, in the castles at least. You have a whole different set of units when you have a province that's outside of your sphere, and if you get in the swamp, you have a whole nother set as well. But looks like it's almost 15 minutes, so I will put an end here, and maybe next episode we'll actually get to see me do a little bit of playing. How about that? Thanks for watching, leave comments, have a good one, guys.